Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Monday, August 4th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. It's years overdue and way over budget, but can anything stop it?
So I would wish that the president and the White House looks at it and say, this is an opportunity for us to deliver a true high-speed rail system in the U.S. for the first time.
How California's high-speed rail fits in the larger context of our nation's infrastructure. That conversation with the man who was put in charge of finishing it in just a moment.
You're driving through the neighborhood one day, and there, in your neighbor's driveway, sits a metal mess of spider webs the likes of which you've never seen. It's a KVPR car. Tell your neighbors, your family, and your friends if they've got a car they no longer need, donate it. KVPR can turn that unwanted car into great radio. It's a super easy and totally free process. Visit kvpr.org/cars to learn more.
And now to our feature story. It's been called a train to nowhere, a boondoggle, a waste of money. California's high-speed rail project is an idea that is slowly rolling into reality. Once built, it'll be one of the first high-speed rails to be built in North America. But ask anyone how they feel about it, and you're likely to get an earful. The long delays and escalating price tag for the project have made it highly politicized. Voters originally approved the high-speed rail in 2008. At the time, the estimate was that it would cost $33 billion for the entire project, and that it would be complete by 2020. Now, the project is years overdue and nearly 4 times the original price. With the dream of a high-speed rail to connect the state fading from people's minds, the High-Speed Rail Authority brought in Ian Choudri last year to get it back on track. He's an experienced transportation leader who's worked on major projects in more than 18 countries. And now he's charged with making the nation's first major high-speed rail a reality. He sees an opportunity to build national pride around the project, even as the federal government slashes funding for it. Choudri was in Fresno last week on a tour of the project sites, and he stopped by the KVPR studios, where he expressed that critics should be patient as the mega project gets off the ground. Choudri is approaching his 1-year anniversary in the role, so I had to start by asking, why would he leave the private sector to inherit a controversial public project?
Where I was primarily, most of my career was as a general contractor, building infrastructure, power, roadways, highways, and airports, and then I decided to come here. And the main reason really was I was looking at this program since 2013, 2014, and came to visit the authority back then, many years ago, and was consulting and advising how we can move this program forward in a different way, not realizing that the issues and challenges that came to the program to bring it to where it is, or where it was when I came, those were not about how we can build bridges or tunnels or embankments or civil infrastructure, which we have been doing in this country for 300 years. Came to realize the challenges were outside of that, and that was very interesting and was not very unusual based on what I've seen in other countries, and I've worked in many countries. And the biggest thing was, it's a high-speed rail program. We have not done one in the U.S. We always keep talking about Taiwan and China and Europe. So my goal was like, let's go in and let's build this and get it done and make an example of how we can repeat and keep building more. And I think we are going to get there.
You mentioned it wasn't the contracting issues. There were other issues that were a problem. Can you be a little more specific?
Yes. I mean, biggest challenges we had were we started the program when we didn't have all the land available. So we brought in the contractors to go build. At the same time, we were trying to acquire all the land that we needed. And we did not realize that how difficult that would be. And it's not easy to forecast every parcel that you have to purchase, what kind of legal challenges that you will be faced with on each one of them. So we had north of 2,500 parcels that we had to buy within the 119 miles, and each one of them went through some litigious process to acquire while we had the contractor fully mobilized. So that was just one big issue. There were others.
Yeah, you said in another interview that the sequencing of the project was off. That's probably part of what you're mentioning.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Well, I have to pivot to the federal funding situation because just a few weeks ago, President Trump announced it would be pulling $4 billion in federal grants. So how is that going to affect the project at this moment?
My personal hope is that the federal government realizes the criticality of this program and change their mind because really it's the only true high-speed rail program under construction in the U.S. and I think also not yet in Canada. So it's the largest one in northern North America hemisphere. So I would wish that the president and the White House looks at it and say, this is an opportunity for us to deliver a true high-speed rail system in the U.S. for the first time. Having said that, the absence or the pause on the federal funding of this $4.1 billion does not change our prospects of delivering the program. What we will now look at, the absence or the pause on this funding, what are the other things that we can continue doing? And what we have done now is replanned the activities to just continue delivering and continue building and deliver on the promise that we made.
I have to say the Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy's been very critical of the project. He even, I'll quote him, said, "It's time for this boondoggle to die." Now, I had to look up what boondoggle means, and the definition is work or activity that's wasteful or pointless, but gives the appearance of having value. So how do you justify the value of this project when at this point it hasn't delivered what it promised to do?
I mean, these are mega initiatives, largest in the country's history. Considering the complexity of a program like this that is about 1,000 miles of high-speed tracks to be built and then trains to run, is no different than when we took the initiative and we said we are going to do the big dig or we will build the interstate highway grid. That was not done in 1 year or 2 years or 10 years. Took generations, 2 or 3 sometime. So what I would say, it needs national commitment. And that is how other countries have done. So calling it that it's not delivered the rail service yet, we need to also look at where we are today. I mean, we are on the verge of laying tracks within the next 18, 20 months. So we are getting there, but in order to get there, you have to deal with all the issues that I was just talking about.
Now, on July 22nd, California's Republican congressional delegation, which includes Bakersfield Representative Vince Vaughn and Hanford Representative David Valadao, they penned a letter praising the pulling of these federal funds. And they wrote, quote, "This project continues to drain taxpayer coffers while other important infrastructure projects languish," adding that the project won't ever be viable. I think there are a lot of Californians who share that sentiment. So you mentioned having sort of national buy-in is important, but how do you have that when this project has become so political and really a sticking point between Democrats and Republicans?
Yes, we have cynics and critics of the program, but the majority of Californians, the way I know it, support the program. And here is the reason. Connecting communities through our high-speed rail system does more than just moving people on a train. It transforms permanently the economic infrastructure of the state and of the country. So if you look at how Japan and Western Europe implemented these programs, it was not politicized. I mean, yes, there were large funding commitments in the And the programs in those countries had challenges, but the government stayed committed. So what we are looking at now, the state is committed, definitely the administration and the legislature, and the folks that I talk to. We would love to have also the federal government commit the same way. Yes, there will be criticism, but that is always the healthiest thing to do is just talk about, hey, what works and what doesn't. And my job is to go fix that.
To your point about the state supporting the project, Governor Newsom was very critical of the funding being pulled by the federal government. He called it a, quote, heartless attack on the Central Valley. Obviously, this project is important economically to this region. But I have to ask, I'm sure there's folks here who are wondering, why would I want to go from Merced to Bakersfield so quickly when I have a car?
Well, if you go back to original funding that is currently being discussed, there was a portion of funding that came through federal dollars that was under President Obama's administration. And it was focused on building in Central Valley. And the reason was traffic congestion and air quality. Those were the initiatives because Central Valley was suffering from that. And also changing the quality of life of people. So I drive on SR 99 and Highway 5. Any time of the day I have taken that road at 4 a.m. and other times. You can just see how congested it is due to the economic activity that is happening in the Central Valley through the farmlands. And so now imagine a day when traffic is reduced, greenhouse gas emissions are reduced significantly in Central Valley. And then think about Central Valley getting connected to Silicon Valley in a very short time, which will be in our plan. Then you can see how does it impact folks who are living here and the quality of their life and the economic benefits that they're going to get.
That was my conversation with Ian Choudri, CEO of the High-Speed Rail Authority. Choudri tells us that the section of the high-speed rail in the valley from Merced to Bakersfield should be completed by 2032. The first tracks will start to go in next year, and the entire project has a completion date of 2039. In the coming days, the High-Speed Rail Authority will release a newly formed plan that Choudri says will show how the rail will get completed. As he continues to sell the project, Choudri said failing to deliver is, quote, not an option. And that is today's show. If you enjoy listening to Central Valley Daily, please help support the podcast by leaving a 5-star rating in your podcast app. And you can always share the podcast with a friend. That helps too. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and Crescencio Rodriguez Delgado, with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. You can find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
These days, there's so much news, it can be hard to keep up with what it all means for you, your family, and your community. The Consider This podcast from NPR features our award-winning journalism. 6 days a week, we bring you a deep dive on a news story and provide the context and analysis that helps you make sense of the news. We get behind the headlines. We get to the truth. Listen to the Consider This podcast from NPR.